Hello, welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be looking at some best of Redditor updates. I hope you enjoy. Let's jump into the first story. Story 1. My half-sister Heather and I never really got along. We both are 24. My father left my mother for her mother and we were born the same month 20 days apart. It has always been weird. It doesn't help that Heather's mom hates me and my mom. By extension, Heather and I didn't have the best relationship. She has always tried to one-up me. Even though we both have a similar economic background. I can give examples of this, but for the sake of the world limit won't write them here. So now my fiancé and I got engaged last month and had our engagement party this Saturday. We had planned it originally as a casual formal event. Nice dresses, but not I am going to the Met Gala ball nice. More like we are going to a good restaurant nice. Anyway, my cousin hits me up saying she has to show me something. It was the picture of the dress Heather was gonna wear. This dress. Jesus Christ. It can only be described as opulent. It was long and white. Strapless with sewn in crystals and golden accents. I'm pretty sure it's a wedding dress, but I can't be 100%. This made me really mad. So I decided. Fuck that. I started texting people telling them that there had been a change of plans. And that instead of casual formal I decided to make it a costume party. My mother's side is crazy for Halloween, so they were immediately on board. I told my father via text and asked him to relay the message to Heather, her mother, knowing full well that he would forget or leave it to the last minute. Saturday comes along. Guests start showing up. Most of them are in costumes. Some didn't have time to get one. We just provided them with fun hats and cheap wigs. Heather, my dad and her mother come like 1 hour late. As soon as she notices that everyone was either wearing elaborate costumes or weird accessories and she didn't stand out, she lost it. Especially when my fiancé came along and told her that her bride dress looked amazing for a cheap costume. She left crying and her mother and my father told me that I was being childish and I could have told Heather myself and not have asked my father. For those interested, my fiancé was dressed as Bubbles and I was dressed as Mojo Jojo. My mom and aunts went as ABBA. Other memorable costumes were Luffy and Zorro, Ian Malcolm and John Hammond, and Jesus. Edit. So why did I invite her? It's one of those weird family situations where not inviting them would have been more dramatic. You know, when you try to please everyone. Plus, I still wanted a relationship with my father, so not inviting Heather and her mom would have made things super difficult and made it so my father would have had to choose. When I kept thinking of it, I noticed that my father wouldn't have chosen me in this scenario. Which is why I ended up cutting them off. You let her win. No. The point of this is to ruin my half-sister's intention. She wasn't just dressed nicely as some of you put it. She wore a wedding dress to my engagement party. I'd much rather subvert this whole mess rather than have her smugly sitting at the table with her wedding dress. Also, some of you are really hung up on the cheap wigs part and ignore literally everything else regarding the party. A minority of our guests wore those cheap wigs. Also, it literally doesn't matter. We had a blast. After she left, I didn't even think of her again till a few days later. I don't regret the costume party. I wish I had thought of it earlier. TBH. Relevant comments. Commenter 1. I saw your post on Ida first. What you did was so petty, I love it. Please tell me you disinvited them to your entire wedding after that though. Oop, I have officially gone NC with that side of the family. My father was a spineless slug. I never looked forward to seeing him and had little love left for him. Commenter 2. I read your Ida post. Why do you have Heather in your life? Keep this in mind. Yes, I get that you would like a relationship with your father, and that's fine. No judgment for me on that front. As far as your father's wife and his child with her, she might be a half-sibling, but you have zero obligation to her, emo. I wouldn't keep inviting her anywhere, especially since she tries to outshine you. In fact, I remember commenting on your Ida post. If your father is insisting that to have a relationship with him you must have one with his wife and child, well, there's a choice for you to make. I would not tolerate this disrespect, bullying, and abuse by her. She may share a father with you, but she's really gross and I wouldn't have her in my life. Oop, it's one of those weird family situations where not inviting them would have been more dramatic. You know, when you try to please everyone. Plus, I still wanted a relationship with my father, so not inviting Heather and her mom would have made things super difficult and made it so my father would have had to choose. When I kept thinking of it, I noticed that my father wouldn't have chosen me in this scenario. Which is why I ended up cutting them off. Update, 20 months later, February 20th, 2024. I had planned countless times to update this post. I even asked the mods if it was allowed. But I was too lazy and always stopped halfway through, lol. Anyway, to the update. I got married. It was an eventful and thankfully drama-free day. My father was not in attendance. After my engagement party, I realized that he would never choose me willingly. Even if he loves me, he doesn't love me enough to stand up for me. He constantly allows his wife and daughter to walk over me and even become abusive. So, I wrote him a lengthy email from my old school email account. It detailed my resentful feelings against him and uninvited him from the wedding. Then I logged out. Because I know myself. I would be upset with his answer, and if he didn't answer, I would also be upset. I also blocked him and his family from all access. And I went cold turkey. Freezing even. I changed phone providers and deleted my social media accounts for a while. He did try to contact me through my mother. She said it was just upsetting. So, I told her I did not want to know. So, I just cut him off. And boy, my life improved drastically. We had an amazing wedding. Unhinged things that happened after the wedding. I got a cease and desist letter from my half-sister. It was very vague and weird. But we quickly found out that it was only a Google copy pasta. My stepmother followed me to the supermarket and tried to intimidate me, to apologize to Heather. She made the produce wildly uncomfortable. My father tried to pick me up at work. He was walking next to me, while I went to my car. He was trying to get me to apologize to Heather and her mom. He said that I should be the bigger person and that I know how both of them are. So, I just told him that he must be mistaken because my father is dead. He just stood there as I drove off. Then they started to bother the rest of the extended family. Heather and her mom apparently wanted them to cut me off finally. Which backfired spectacularly. Because now they are cut off. This also means that they are excluded from a lot of family events that they were looking forward to, plus, they can't use my uncle's cabin. So, Heather's mom had allegedly been at her sister's since the whole breakdown. I have to be honest. I don't know how much of this is true. As you know, the toxic gossip train always has to be taken with a grain of salt. But I think it's funny. The sad thing is that I don't even miss my father. His absence has had zero negative effect on my life. We did have one more costume party around Halloween. But this time we gave everyone more time and it was even more fun. My mom's side of the family all pitched in, we got a venue and invited a bunch of people. I recommend this totally. I met so many of my cousin's friends, who I have kept in touch with. So that is all for me. Not all too dramatic. Relevant comments. Commenter 1. What was the fake cease and desist for? To stop holding costume parties? Oop, for disruptive behavior. I found the template she used and everything. Commenter 2. Just curious, how is your mom with your father and all of this? Is she remarried? Hopefully, she did better after the trash took itself out. Oop, she has a long-time partner. He is very lovely. This next story is from r/today I fucked up. The actual fuck-up happened yesterday at the dinner table after school. The after effects of my fuck-up have me currently at the ER getting my son checked out for anaphylactic shock. Yesterday, my kid came home and was obviously upset. So I asked him what was wrong. He's 8, so he still talks to me about this stuff. He proceeds to tell me that at lunch, another kid in his class is bullying him about his peanut allergy, saying that he's faking his allergy and that he's gonna wipe some peanut butter on him to prove that he is faking. My kid says to him that he isn't faking and that could die just from touching peanut butter. Other kids said he didn't care and that he wanted him to die anyway. At this point my kid said that he told the teacher and the lunchroom monitor, who both know about his allergy, and they were able to intervene yesterday. I had a long talk with my kid about doing the right thing and telling the teacher and not letting this other kid make him lash out. Then we talked about the hard part. Now, I'm sure I'm gonna generate some hate with some people here with what I told him next, and that's fine. We are allowed to have differing opinions. But I'm not apologizing to anyone for teaching my kid to stand up and defend himself. After we talked about doing the right thing, and doing everything you can do to avoid a bad situation, I told him that sometimes you have to do the wrong thing to protect yourself, and that should always be the absolute last resort. When he asked what I meant, I told him that if that kid, as long as the bully is only taunting him with words, then he should always walk away, but if he ever did try to put peanut butter on you, then you hit him as hard as you can with the side of your hand in the throat. Kind like a throat chop. Then you stop unless the bully keeps trying. Fast forward to this very afternoon and I get a call from the principal of the school saying that my son assaulted another student and needed to be picked up. I asked what happened, and of course, they won't talk about it over the phone. But I smiled a little bit because I already knew. I get to school, and I see my kid sitting in the office, tears streaming down his face. So, I walk in and the principal tries talking to me, but I blow right past her and ask my kid what happened. He says the bully had peanut butter on his fingers and he was threatening to wipe it on his face. Then my kid said that he did what I told him to do and hit the kid in the throat because he wiped peanut butter on his arm. I looked at his arm that was pretty swollen up and asked him if he was having trouble breathing. My kid said he was fine, just a little shaky. At this point the principal interrupts with her, "Mr. So-and-so, we can't just have kids hitting other children just because they had a little peanut butter wiped on them. Kids do this kind of thing. We are gonna have to suspend him for a few days." It's obvious to me that the principal is clueless about the peanut allergy, so I cut her off and asked my kid if he told the bully to stop before he hit the other kid. He said yes. I yelled at him several times that I'm allergic to peanut butter and told him to stop, and he just kept acting like he was gonna wipe it on me. Now the principal has a shocked look on her face. I asked to see the video from the cafeteria, and sure as shit my kid can be seen and heard screaming and trying to back away from his bully. At the point where it looks like the bully grabs my kid's arm, my kid yells at the top of his little lungs, "I told you to stop." Then he grabs the bully by the arm, pulls him towards himself and executes the best clothesline I've ever seen anyone do and floors this kid. Then my kid sits down and starts crying in the middle of the cafeteria. At this point, I tell the principal that if my kid isn't allowed back at school tomorrow, I was consulting with a lawyer about the attempted murder of my son. I also said that assuming he didn't have any other ill effects from this, I would be fine not pressing charges against the school and the bully, since it looks like he may have already learned his lesson. Since I didn't get a response and it's been about half an hour since the peanut butter was wiped on my kid's arm, I picked him up and left to take him to the ER to get checked out. About 10 minutes ago I got a phone call from the school board superintendent saying that the school board has decided to let my kid come back to school tomorrow. Edit 1. Kid has a clean bill of health from the hospital. The swelling is starting to go down after some epinephrine. Edit 2. Kid got cookies and cream ice cream. Edit 3. I have been invited to a meeting with the school board on Thursday afternoon. Will update afterwards. TL, DR. Told my kid to punch a bully in the throat. Kid listened and did it the next day and got suspended for defending himself. Principal had no damn idea that my kid had a peanut allergy and was then unsuspended when I threatened to talk to a lawyer about attempted murder charges. Update Jan 25, 2023. So apparently, I can't add more at this point, so here is the rest of the update. Edit number 4, just left the meeting, which wasn't with the school board as I was led to believe on the phone. It was with the principal and a legal representative from the school board. Had a lawyer with me, and prior to this meeting, we discussed what I wanted out of this meeting. My main concerns were: 1. Making sure that there was a procedure in place to keep allergens away from my child. 2. Ensuring that this child has no ability to assault my child again. I also wanted to know how it was that the principal wasn't informed or aware of my child's allergy prior to trying to tell me that he was going to be suspended. Lawyers talked legal stuff for a little bit while I listened, and the principal listened. Eventually, my turn to talk came and I simply explained points 1 and 2 above. I also asked why the principal didn't take the time to assess the whole situation. The explanation I got was that she was told by the monitor that it was almond butter, not peanut butter by the monitor, so she really didn't look further into it. I can understand her point, but it doesn't make things any better from my perspective. So cut and dry stuff first. The bully child has been moved to a different school. Unfortunately, I don't have any legal recourse to find out which school he has been moved to, and frankly don't care. The cafeteria monitor has been fired. I didn't hear this at the meeting, but my son's teacher called last night after school and told me. I asked why and I was told that she was distracted by her phone when all of the commotion started, which explains why this was allowed to progress in the first place. Based on the recommendation of a friend and many of you via PM, I requested and was accommodated with an allergy-free table at our school, and I'm being told every other school in the district will be implementing one as well, where children with known allergies will eat lunch at, and anyone who eats with them will have their lunches inspected by a teacher and a monitor to ensure no allergens are present. Now the weird stuff. The kid probably did wipe almond butter on my son. Kid's parent found out through a mutual friend where we lived and showed up at my house last night. The bully was very apologetic to me and asked if he could apologize to my son, to which I said yes, of course. I invited the parents and son into the living room, and this child started crying and said he didn't mean to hurt my son. My son started crying as well and said he didn't want to hit him, and he apologized as well. Then the parents asked the bully child to explain what happened. So apparently this kid likes peanut butter and almond butter and has almond butter on a sandwich and a little pack of peanut butter in his lunch for crackers. The bully child thought it would be funny to continue the tormenting from yesterday, said something about putting peanut butter on my son and put a little bit on his fingers to make him think it was peanut butter. Then he wiped them off afterwards and got some of the almond butter from his sandwich, and that's what was on his hands when he grabbed my son's arm. I can only guess that there was a little peanut residue left on the bully's hands when he grabbed my son, which explains the subdued swelling reaction. I asked the kid if he knew what a peanut allergy actually does to a person, which to the other parents' credit, they had actually made him read WebMD about it, and he explained the whole inability to breathe and some other things his mind grasped onto. So, I took the opportunity to show this young man the EpiPen needle. We have one that we've had to use previously just for show and tell purposes, that you have to stick a person within an anaphylactic shock scenario. Then I gave him the trainer unit and showed him where it goes and how to press the button. Yes, I told him it was the trainer unit, but I really thought hard about not telling him. I ultimately decided against that because that wouldn't make me any better than the bully kid in front of me. When the button actuated, I think he jumped about 15 in the air and he was obviously scared. Parents apologized again, as did the bully kid. I told all of them that I was satisfied that a lesson was learned here, and I wouldn't be pursuing any additional charges against the kid or his parents. As the parents and bully kid are leaving, my son runs right past us all and gives the bully a hug, and tells him that he hopes he isn't in too much trouble. I was asked to sign a non-disclosure agreement, which I of course declined. I want my options open to me in case something like this happens again. Until then I'm letting this die. Good for the kid for standing up for himself. Some parents are so against violence and their kids suffer greatly for it. If you have any kids, I highly recommend you put them in martial arts. My parents did, and I really a lot benefited from it. So my dad has always been a very show-off person. Announcements about grades, telling everyone how great his daughters are doing, telling off my sister for having a job he can't show off. When he divorced from my mom he was a good parent for a while and then he met Eva. Eva is way younger, has had a lot of work done, and used to send him flirty messages when he was still married. They got married very early on in the relationship because they've known each other ages. She told him not to text us too much because we are adults. She checks his phone all the time, and she forbade him from seeing us Christmas Day or St. Stephen's Day because he needed to be with his new family and it would have been disrespectful to her for him to see his ex-wife, and she's overall been an absolute nightmare. And he follows everything she tells him to do. Now I'm getting married and told my dad he's invited but she's not. I've met the woman once and I don't like her, plus I know my father isn't a great person and he'd be making jabs at my mom about being older than Eva, etc. To make it fair, my mom's boyfriend is also not invited although he's a sweetheart. My dad's answer to my invite has been to pretend nothing is happening. I sent him a save the date and he sent me a thumbs up emoji. He hasn't asked me one question about the wedding, not even the venue, even though he told me shortly before meeting Eva that he was looking forward to me and my sister getting married and how excited he was. Myself and my fiancé are from different religions and cultures, so everyone's had lots of questions about how we are handling that. Turns out he hasn't told Eva I'm getting married, and he hasn't told anyone else, so he is just planning to say he has a work trip and come to the wedding. I don't actually think he's going to show up. I think he will say he is going to and then not show up at the last minute, but my sister thinks he'll show up with her and make a whole scene because he told her Eva has just as much right to be there as your mom. Has anyone else dealt with something similar? Do I need a backup to walk me down the aisle? Relevant comments. Commenter 1. I just wanted to point out that your dad is in an abusive relationship. His new wife is cutting him off from his family, his support system, so she can have more control over him. He probably won't be allowed to go to the wedding because she's not invited, and probably wouldn't have been allowed to even if she was. Your dad is an ass all on his own, but I think it's important to recognize that he's still capable of being abused and that it's happening. Oop. Yes, they both suck. He has always been a cheater, at least 3 other women during the span of 10 years that we have evidence of, and I think, no evidence. He was cheating on my mom with her, so that's why she's constantly monitoring his phone and not allowing him to leave the house. We told him not to marry her and that her behavior is very concerning, but he seems very blind. Commenter 2. It sounds like he wants to come, and he knows the only way him coming without his wife is possible as if he lies about it. He's risking getting caught to be able to go, which speaks volumes about their relationship, but if she checks his phone, you're causing further risk of her finding out if you keep messaging him about the wedding. Stick to phone calls so there's no record. I hope he can make it and there's no drama. Oop. I rang him the first time to tell him I was getting married and then sent him the save the date the second time asking if he was coming. I didn't know that he hadn't told her at the time. I've no idea why the wife wouldn't let him go to his daughter's wedding though if she's as amazing as he says. On why his mom's boyfriend isn't invited. Far more drama if I include him and exclude Eva. It's not worth the headache. He will for sure not show up if I invite my mom's boyfriend and not his wife. My mom understands that even though my dad is not the best dad ever, I still want him there. They aren't together that long, so she's okay with her boyfriend staying at home, plus then he can stay with the dogs, and she doesn't have to worry about getting a dog sitter. Most of the family is going as well, so there's nobody to look after them. Update, October 9, 2023. So, it turns out my dad ended up telling Eva about my wedding and telling her that she was invited to the wedding to avoid problems. She got herself a dress, booked a hotel, etc. My dad tried to convince me to invite her, but his biggest selling point was that he thought it'd be an amazing time to introduce Eva to my mom and my mom's whole family. Why would he think my mom wanted to meet this woman is beyond me, and that she would feel excluded otherwise. He always rubs in our faces his new family, even calling it his new family, keeps canceling every dinner he sets up with my sister due to some emergency involving Eva, or tells us to call Eva mom. Both me and my sister are way beyond the point of calling some random her mom since we both moved out, and he's being ridiculous. He called me, again and again, trying to convince me, and I said no, explaining that I knew the only reason he wanted to bring his wife to the wedding was to upset mom and that I wasn't going to let the two of them do that. He makes jabs at my mom every time he's around her about how great his new wife is. I thought the whole thing was over until I sent him some information about the wedding, and I guess he started feeling guilty and told us that he booked the flight for Eva as well, and he booked himself on the same flight as my mom, changed his whole flight plans just so he could be on the flight with her, so that my mom and Eva could still meet, aka he could still rub his new wife in her face and try and screw with my mom's head by putting her down and making comparisons, and then Eva would just go off and shop while he was at the ceremony. I'm not sure if this is true or if he was gonna try and bring her to the wedding and hope she didn't get kicked out. I'm trying to convince my mom to change her flight so he can't get inside her head 12 hours before the wedding. I don't know if I should uninvite him. Relevant comments. Commenter 1. Yes. What has your mom done to you that you'd facilitate hurting her? Why does he know so many details of your mom's travel plans? Oop. She is the main reason I haven't uninvited him. Yet she keeps saying I need to have a relationship with him and being more understanding. He knows because he asked, and we figured he was trying to avoid being on the same flight as her. Edit, wrong word. Update December 17, 2023. The wedding has happened. It just took a bit of time to update because it's my life and it all went south and was too raw to try to write in a coherent way. It still probably won't be super coherent. Spoiler alert, my dad got uninvited. Summary TLDR from previous posts. My dad was acting weird around the wedding. Turns out he told his new wife she was invited when she was not. When it got close to the wedding, and I told him to tell her he got his wife a flight with him so she wouldn't feel left out, and then purposefully chose to be on the same flight as my mom so that my mom and his new wife could meet. He has a vindictive streak, so we knew he was trying to upset my mom. Okay, so update. I asked him to change his flight because he had specifically asked me what flight my mom was on so he could avoid her. He had said, and my mom was flying with my grandpa, so it would have been quite hard to change their flights to avoid him. My dad told me he'd changed flights and that he'd invent some lie to tell Eva. He also said I was a horrible person for not believing him when he told me that he had not booked the flight out of spite, but he told my mom he booked the flight on purpose so that she could meet his new wife, and what reason would there be for wanting them to meet other than to be a nah? I thought the whole thing was resolved and my mom was really adamant that she wanted my dad to be there because I don't have a great relationship with him, and she knew it would have meant the end of the relationship if I uninvited him. Fast forward to 2 days after the conversation, my dad rebooked his flight and sent me a message to say he had changed flights. Then that evening he calls me. I answered the phone, and I could hear someone screaming down the phone. Turns out Eva got her hands on my dad's phone, read the messages where I asked him to reschedule the flight, and she rang me shouting down the phone that I am unhinged, I am a horrible person, I am effed in the head. She said that I am so weird because I'm in my 30s and I still talk to my parents. This one was really weird because am I meant to stop at a certain age? And that I'm jealous of the fact that my dad has a new life. I was very calm and said that I'm sorry she's upset, that the issues around the wedding aren't really related to her directly, and that my dad was trying to upset my mom. I also said my mom's partner is not coming either, so it wouldn't be fair to have her there. She started shouting that my mom was a fat old cow and I lost it. I absolutely lost it. In this whole thing, my mom has said nothing bad about Eva. I told her I never had any issue with her until now, but that she's a crazy bitch who is super controlling and that I was so glad I never invited her. Then I hung up because by that stage it had been 2 minutes of her shouting at me, and I didn't feel like there was any point in talking any longer. The whole time this was going on my dad was in the background saying feebly, "Oh no, don't be mad at her," while she was shouting down the phone at me. Anyway, next day my dad calls me and says that Eva was upset because he didn't tell her about changing the flights and that I was awful for responding to her like that. He also said, "Do you really think this is my fault?" And I said yes, and he said, "Do you really refuse to take any responsibility? None of this would have happened if you had invited her like I asked you to." And I said, "Does he actually think he has any say in my wedding when he didn't even ask me what type of ceremony I had, never asked to see my dress or get involved in any way, monetary or otherwise?" He asked me if he was still invited, and I said obviously not. He then told me to be careful what I wrote in my messages to him because she was monitoring his phone, and I said I'm not speaking to him again so that won't be a problem. The wedding was good, my mom walked me down the aisle and there was nobody there to cause drama, so in the end it all worked out for the best. The whole thing was just a lot more dramatic than I originally thought it would be. We thought he might end up not coming because he was too entangled in his lies, but for sure did not expect the call I got, and it was very close to the wedding when all the drama happened. The more stories I hear about weddings, the more I am glad I have a normal family. Cutting off a parent can be very hard, but you did the right thing. Hopefully, your life gets a lot less eventful from now on. That's it for this video. Thank you for listening and I will see you in the next one.